Good morning, STT radio listeners. Unfortunately, our usual host, Stock Sumo, is having some technical difficulties this morning. I think he needs a little bit of coffee. But in any case, Haas will take over this morning. We do have a special STT radio exclusive interview this morning, not with the CEO. Company of interest this morning is EKNL, Eco International Corp. We have a special guest on the show this morning, and Dr. Paul Ziemer, recently appointed as a director of Eco International Corp in relation to their new partner, joint venture partner, Neurovasc Medical Incorporated. Dr. Ziemer is a graduate of the University of Western Ontario in the Canadian Memorial Chiropractic College in Toronto, Canada. He has been in clinical practice since 1997. Dr. Ziemer's interest in lifestyle medicine led him to develop a smoking cessation program and the Personal Best program, which is a weight management health restoration system. And he has also worked extensively with technology and patient care. So highly involved in the medical industry, perfect for the partnership of Eco International and Neurovasc Medical Inc. And obviously their partnership being put in plenty of news releases for Eco International recently related to the FREMS, peripheral neuropathy pain management for diabetic care. So without further ado, I'm just going to bring on here the Dr. Paul Ziemer. How are you doing this morning, Mr. Ziemer?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for taking some time out of your busy morning to join us on the show here. Why don't we just get into it? Why don't you give us, your own brief background of your history and how you got involved with Eco International?
My background basically, as you read there in a little bio, is always had a strong interest in lifestyle medicine. And what that really means is just what can people do and what can they change, or what can, we as practitioners bring to our patients to help them make changes so they don't end up getting sick down the road. So, we all know about exercise. We all know about nutrition. But we have a real issue going forward with the majority of the diseases and the expensive chronic pain and chronic disease challenges that are facing healthcare in North America. A lot of them go back to lifestyle. And if you can help, keep patients healthy as opposed to waiting to diagnose illness as they get older, that's where you can make the greatest gains, and that's where you can change the most lives, and that's where you can save the most money. So my background has always been kind of looking at the use of different technologies like laser therapy for pain management, acupuncture for the use of, we use that for smoking cessation and for addictions. So always looking at that kind of stuff. And then what we've been now working in the world of diabetes in the last couple of years, because it's tied back to our weight management program, obviously, really looking to bring to the market and expand throughout North America the treatment and the early treatment of peripheral neuropathy for diabetics specifically. And EKO came into play when we were looking for someone to be able to provide leasing and financing for physicians, other clinicians that wanted to purchase this equipment, set up clinics, or add it to their existing clinic. So that's sort of how, how what we do is becoming tied to what they do.
Okay, I see. Yeah, so you guys are focused more on the prevention side of things, or it seems like your history is focused more on the prevention side of things. Very interesting. So with the partnership with Eco International, why don't you just give us a little update on the FREMS technology? I know it was this specific device, the FREMS device, that Eco has recently come into the partnership agreement for distribution and some marketing and setting up clinics and whatnot. It was just approved last year in 2011, is that correct?
No, FREMS has actually been approved since I think 2007,
Oh,
both
wow.
in FDA and in Canada with Health Canada. And it has gone through probably what I would call very rigorous sort of presentation and testing with some of the top podiatrists and vascular surgeons throughout North America. So to back up, basically, FREMS is a product of a company called Lorenz Life Tech out of Italy. And they've developed this equipment. And they were really smart about it because, you know, when you want to bring anything to market, you obviously have to make sure it's safe and you want to make sure it's effective. And there's different levels of government that you have to get approvals from to make sure that it is safe and it is effective and to protect the public. And then what they did is they did quite a bit of research in different locations, both in Europe and in North America. And then they began presenting it to some of the top conferences in mainly the United States, to some of the top doctors there, and have them use the equipment, have them take a look at it, have them find ways to implement it so that the patients could get it easy and get it in a non-hospital setting. So it's sort of similar to dialysis. If anyone's familiar with dialysis, you know, patients who need it every other day, 3-4 times a week. So they can go to a hospital, they can go to a private clinic. So because of the numbers of people that suffer from peripheral neuropathy, we're now at the stage where we want to make the access to the treatment more readily available, because it's just not realistic for people to be able to, drive to a hospital and get this type of treatment. And it's not required that, a doctor does it. It can be done by pretty much any healthcare practitioner. But that the process of FREMS sort of being introduced started at the top with the key doctors, and now it's being brought down to sort of what I like to think is sort of the on the street to the patient level, so that it has much more access.
Okay. And then why don't you just expand a little bit on that, getting into some of the details about how ECO International and Neurovasc, Medical Inc. or whatever, plan to distribute this technology throughout Canada and North America. I'm assuming this process has started and you guys are just kind of getting going in a few states within the U.S. How expansive is it within Canada at this point?
Yeah, we really are at the very beginning stage. It's just getting started. We're certainly looking at territories or areas like, what we call Northern Ontario, so anything north of Sudbury, which really isn't that far north, but it seems far north if you live in Toronto, I guess. Areas where they're underserviced in general, areas where there's more amputations from diabetic complications. And as I mentioned earlier, a few of the key doctors who have examined the FREMS equipment in different parts of the U.S., like Washington and Chicago and a couple in L.A., those are some of the first sites we're going to be starting with physicians that are already well aware of the research and well aware of the equipment. So that's where we'll be starting. And EKO International will be providing support and funding for a sales force that will go North America wide. So that's where we need the help from them.
Okay, great. So ECO providing some funding and helping with the expansion. I believe, if I remember correctly, Neurovasc Clinical Inc. is owned 49% by ECO and 51% by Neurovasc Medical Inc.
That's right.
Okay, just to clarify for our listeners here, just moving on a little bit to alliances and strategic partners. There's also talk about this NC-STAT DPN and its obvious relation to both the FREMS technology and, the partnership between ECO and Neurovasc Clinical Inc. This NC-STAT DPN is more of a testing device. It's not an actual treatment for peripheral neuropathy, but it's more of a testing to see if, patients have early stages of peripheral neuropathy. Why don't you talk about that product a little bit? And I believe that this is a product of a much larger company on the NASDAQ, Neurometrics Incorporated. So obviously an affiliation there and pretty big partnership opportunities. So why don't you just touch a little bit on that and how you utilize that treatment?
Sorry. Yeah, the NC stat is a product of Neurometric, and Neurometric is a U.S.-based company. And essentially right now, if you can imagine, if you were diabetic or suspected you were diabetic or started to have some symptoms in your feet like, pain or tingling or numbing, you would go to your family doctor, or you might go to a chiropodist or a podiatrist and have them look at your feet. And they would do something called a monofilament test. And this basically is a simple vibration and sensation test. And you're basically, as the clinician, you're asking the patient, do you feel this? So it's kind of like, I don't know, putting a lighter on your buddy's toe and we'll see how long it takes before he goes, hey, that's hot. So if the person has really bad peripheral neuropathy, it's going to take them a lot longer before they feel the vibration or feel the sense. But it's very subjective. You really are relying on the patient to give you that information. Neurometric is a company that has a history of doing nerve conduction equipment. They started doing carpal tunnel, which is for the wrist, I believe in 1997, 98, 99 area, and you have a very good product there. So they built this device that will actually measure the speed and the size of the nerve conduction. So if you can imagine a message going down your leg all the way down to your pinky toe, they can have this little handheld device that you put on your leg, and it will measure those two things and give you an actual number. And if you have that number, then you can document each patient where they stand. And then if you wait 6 months, if they're getting worse, you can measure them again and you can actually know. So it's a bit of an early, not a bit of, it is an early warning. It's a very objective measurement of how healthy that limb is. And for us, obviously, we're interested in being a customer because we want doctors to use this, because then it'll help us identify clients who may benefit from FREMS.
Okay, so at these clinics that you're setting up, are you using both of these types of technology?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because again, it's like, I don't know, it's kind of like the oil light going on in your car. You just go, great, got to go get the oil lube filter done. Let's go.
Perfect. Why don't we touch a little bit on the market for these two types of technology? I know you're using both of the technologies within the U.S. and Canada, so the markets are probably slightly different in each of those countries. But why don't you just touch on the market? I mean, how big could this really get? Diabetes, obviously one of the most widespread diseases throughout the entire world. And do you guys have any?
It is, yeah. Yeah, it is, unfortunately. And like I said, from a person like me, type 2 diabetes, which is the acquired diabetes, not like the juvenile, which people are born with. Type 2 diabetes, a lot of it is related back to lifestyle. So smoking, obesity, diet. So unfortunately, because obesity is at an all-time high and looks to be growing in younger people, so is diabetes. And, I think there's an estimate of somewhere around 60 million people have diabetes in North America, and somewhere around 60% of those will suffer from peripheral neuropathy. So the diabetic peripheral neuropathy, not only can it be painful, so they start to get tingling, numbness, and then, then what can happen is basically the nerve isn't working, functioning as well on the lower limb. And then what happens if they get a wound or they get a cut, get an infection, because the nerve isn't working, and the nerve is, the thing that regulates everything that goes on in our bodies everywhere, then it could end up with, some pretty drastic complications, like, from an amputation of a toe that turns into an amputation of a foot, which turns into an amputation of a leg. So this is sort of the process. So the numbers are huge, and it's probably, I believe, going to be the number one killer because, it can lead to heart attacks and things too, right? So diabetes does. So it'll probably end up being the number one killer very soon. Now, saying that, if you're a cynic, you might say, well, let's just focus on getting people better nutrition, and let's focus on getting people active, and let's focus on getting people to quit smoking. And generally, you would think we're working towards that. But the problem with diabetes is it's pretty tough to reverse. It's not irreversible, no doubt, but once people are ill and they start having some medications, it can be very difficult to reverse. And a lot of times they've been living a lifestyle for 30, 40, 50 years. They can't make the change. So it's a very scary proposition in healthcare as to how we're going to manage diabetes. And the other thing is that people are living longer, for sure, and we want to make sure that quality of life is as good as it can be.
Okay. Well, I believe I read somewhere in the recent press releases that the diabetes market just for peripheral neuropathy is it's over $10 billion just within the U.S. alone, I think, up to upwards of 14 or 15 billion. So the potential is definitely there, and there's definitely a need for both of these technologies.
Yes, for sure.
Just to clarify, in terms of bottom line revenue, just for our shareholders' sake. I know you're probably more on the actual technology and, marketing side of things. But what sort of revenues, go to the bottom line from, distribution, marketing of the NC Stat and or the FREMS technology for Eco International specifically?
You mean what, we don't, obviously, like I said, I'm not sure how to answer that. We're just getting started, and I guess anything that financials and all that will be posted on our website or reported as they're supposed to be. But like I said, we're really just getting going. So,
well, I guess specifically, from the sale of the actual product itself, do some of those revenues go to Eco's bottom line? And then actually for
yes, they do. So there's two. Sorry, I guess I kind of misunderstood. There's two ways that essentially Eco and Neurovasc, that's how they make their money, is the sale of the equipment. And there's also consumables for each one of these units. So each patient will have electrodes that are stuck on their legs for both the test and the treatment. And those obviously, for sanitary reasons, are one use. So there's revenue that will be generated for EKO from the sale of consumables and the sale of equipment.
Okay. Yeah, I guess that's where I was getting. I wasn't getting at specific revenues like 3 years down the road. It's probably pretty difficult to tell because this is a very, very early stage, and it's kind of hard to tell how quickly it's going to take off. But thank you for clarifying that. We are in the business of the stock market, and, the stock market, people are always interested in bottom line numbers. So I just figured.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, with all due respect, I want to give as much as I can, but, just whatever. That's where we're at right now. But what I do like about it is that, obviously we're going to help a lot of people, hopefully, and we're going to, hopefully save some amputations. That's very important. But from a revenue standpoint, being able to have not just sell equipment but have consumables means that the more people you help, the more lives you save, the more consumables you're going to need. So it's kind of a nice model that way too, right?
Yeah, it's a very nice strategy and model. And obviously helping lots of people is always good. I know I have some relatives, and most of the people out there probably do, with diabetes that have had some issues with peripheral neuropathy, so a lot of people can relate to it as well, which is really nice. I have a question from a couple of listeners actually related to the NC Stat in some Walmart stores. Can you comment on that at all?
I sort of prefer not to, but I guess I'll just say this, that the neurometric, that Walmart arrangement and all that was something that they sold, and that's, you'd have to talk to them directly for more information about that. But I believe that has been covered in their press releases and, in detail. So I don't want to speak for them. Let's put it that way.
Okay, that sounds good. We'll just leave it at that for now. Moving on a little bit, let's just talk about your predictions for the company, Neurovasc Medical Inc., Neurovasc Clinical Inc., Eco International, and how successful this recent partnership will be, 1 year, 3 years, 5 years down the road. Can you comment on where you see this going?
Well, I can't predict the future. I mean, certainly I'm optimistic, passionate about it, that's for sure. But, we're working towards it being, super successful, but I really can't predict the future. I don't know. I just hate to say something that's over. I'd rather over-deliver than over-promise, if you know what I mean.
Okay, I assume you have plans to, expand, throughout all 50 states at some point within the U.S. and Canada, expand into other territories?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you got some pretty significant partners in place to be able to do that. Early stage, we've gotten a couple press releases about you setting up your first clinics.
Yeah.
Why don't we actually talk about that? Just let me pull up the actual awareness campaign update here. This applied to the first clinic, the Mayer Institute, or the Mayer Institute. I'm not sure
the Mayer Institute.
how it's pronounced. Yeah. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, and that one is a great example of a clinic and a group of people that are making a huge difference in their community. So Dr. Perry Mayer is a wound care specialist. He's a medical doctor. His whole practice is around wound care, and 99% of his patients are diabetics. Some of the worst wounds, some of the toughest conditions that you'd ever want to see. So I've personally known him for about 2 years now, and we've been working with the FREMS for the patients that are in the early stages. So we're talking before people have had amputations. So we have FREMS units in his clinic in Hamilton, and while he's obviously the majority of the day seeing the worst wounds and saving, toes and feet and limbs, he's built a nice clinic there where we can test and treat people who have peripheral neuropathy and try to improve and try to slow them down that road towards, really bad wounds or amputations as they age or as their health goes down.
Okay. Sounds like a very strategic partnership there with the Mayer Institute, and sounds like you guys will be getting involved with some pretty severe cases. So pretty cool.
Yeah, and like I said, because he has practiced, they do see the worst of the worst, and he's got a great reputation for taking care of diabetic patients. We're able to check people earlier, measure them, test them, and then treat them with the FREMS ahead of time before they get really bad. It's going to allow them to be healthier and avoid having to have wounds that won't heal and things like that.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
Just talking about one of the last pieces of information in some of the press recently, Neurovasc Clinical Inc. presentation at the Canadian Federation of Podiatric Medicine Conference, and that's in London coming up here in late October. You will be speaking, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's two parts to that. So we're at the show with Neurometric. Dr. Snow from Neurometric will be speaking, and he'll be talking about peripheral neuropathy, some different thoughts on the testing and what we're seeing in terms of the type of patient, and then I'll be doing a hands-on session where we're working with all of the show mainly will be podiatrists and chiropodists from Ontario, now I guess across Canada, and clinical educators, clinical diabetes educators. A lot of them are nurses or retired nurses, so they may work in a pharmacy or they might work in a doctor's office where they actually just counsel and work with diabetics, so those types of people. So a great conference to be at for sure, people that are on the front lines. And so then we'll be discussing the testing equipment, and we'll be discussing the FREMS equipment, and then looking obviously for hosts, so people that are already working in this field from different parts of Canada who would be ideal to be hosting this type of equipment.
Okay, great. I can imagine that will be a huge marketing and networking tool for the company and the FREMS technology and the NC Stat and whatnot.
Yeah, I think so, because it's exactly the type of people, like I said, who are doing this frontline care every day. So they really know what's happening in their own community, and they're seeing these patients every day. So they're like, so far, everyone that we've spoken to, like from the diabetic educators that I've spoken to that work at different pharmacies and that, they're very excited, and they're also very overwhelmed. Like they spend a lot of time trying to get people's, their health and their neuropathy and different things under control.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. How about the market outside of the United States? I know there's different approval processes throughout the European Union and elsewhere. You said the product was through Lorenz Neurovasc, and they were out of Italy. So it just makes me curious as far as, is this FREMS technology pretty widespread overseas already, or do you guys have plans to expand outside of North America at some point as well?
Yeah, it's becoming fairly widespread in Europe, obviously with the Italian head office leading the way. That doesn't have really anything to do with us. Personally, again, without making any promises, I have done some work in Malaysia with laser therapy and in the past, and I do believe we would look to expand to other territories, but obviously the most important one is our own backyard, so we'll focus there. But I would like to see it expand, whether it's us or somebody else. Obviously I'd love it to be us, but we can't predict the future. We'll see where we go. But because, as you mentioned earlier, it's amazing how diabetes has become more of a worldwide phenomenon. Again, it goes back to that lifestyle. I think that, as other countries around the world become more wealthy and they have a burgeoning middle class, unfortunately, some of the bad things are they start eating poorly, having more stress. Smoking rates are very high, particularly in places like Malaysia, where I visited and did a little work. So they end up diabetics, and it's quite interesting that they're struggling the same way as we are.
Okay. Yeah, I can imagine the overseas market coming into play at some point. And it sounds like you already have some sort of network established out that way. So, very, very cool. We've covered tons of information. I know you've got a super busy morning on your hands. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we head out?
No, I just want to say thanks. That's great. And then basically, I think, to be fair to everybody, whatever like that, the website of ekointernational.com and the Neurovasc clinical website is under construction, but those two places would be the best places for, people to get the most up-to-date information as to what we're up to, and we'll do our best to, make it good for everybody.
All right. Well, we sincerely appreciate you joining us this morning. I know we have some eager listeners that are also very appreciative. We've gotten some pretty good comments throughout the show here. Tons of good information covered. It sounds like you guys are setting yourself up to potentially get pretty big here in the near future. And just before we head off the air, just in the short term here, what can shareholders or potential shareholders look forward to in terms of information that'll become public coming from ECO International? Can you give any comments or hints on that?
Just that I promise we will absolutely do our best to be very, very good communicators. That's, again, not being too experienced in this world, I'll just leave it at that, is that I believe in really good communication makes good teams, and so I will, promise you we will communicate regularly and communicate properly so that everyone will feel confident, that they know what's going on. That's all. That's my commitment. Is that my number one commitment is to the patients and to the process of taking good care of people and finding good doctors that want to work with us. The second one is to really communicate well with everyone that has an interest in this, because if you communicate well, then I think you enhance your reputation, and also you never know what doors might open if you communicate well with people who might have other things that can help you, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's all about networking. Starts with a good
some days it is, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much once again, Mr. Paul Ziemer. I'd like to thank you for joining us here at STT Radio this morning. And also, as we always do, we'd like to extend an open invitation for you to join us at some point in the future. Hopefully when the company is a little bit down the road and they have expanded everywhere. So we all have access to the
thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Technologies. So thanks again, and make sure you keep in touch for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Stock Sumo, are you with me?
I'm back. Great job, Hoss. Way to go.
Thanks, buddy. You threw me for a loop there right at the start of the interview. I felt a little thrown off, man.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my computer system. I think a little bit delayed here this morning. It must be some of those viruses I picked up over the weekend.
Oh, well, whatever it was, it's all right. It's good to have you back. Well, that was a pretty good interview. He was a really good speaker. I'm really excited for the future of ECO International.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. Very well-spoken CEO and excellent interview. Good job.
Yeah, I think he was hinting at some press releases coming this week. I'm just going to put that out there. We'll call it a Haas hunch. Haas hunch. So hopefully they put out some news. But good stuff, and we need to head out here. We'll let you all get back to your trading for the day. The market opened about 6 minutes ago. But great interview. We will have an archived link posted out as soon as we get that crunched out. So have a good trading day, folks. We will see you again tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Late.
Aloha.
Thank you for listening to Stock Traders Talk Radio. All views and topics talked about on Stock Traders Talk Radio is solely for entertainment purposes. We are not professional financial advisors and always recommend you seek the advice of a professional financial advisor. Never invest in any stock featured on our show unless you can afford to lose your entire investment. The information contained on our show is based on sources which we believe to be reliable, but is not guaranteed by us as being accurate, and might not be a complete statement or summary of the available data. Stock Traders Talk Radio advises that the investments in companies profiled are commonly considered to be high risk, and use of the information provided is at the investor's sole risk. Thank you for listening to Stock Traders Talk Radio.